Hi, this is Eternal King bringing you another LOR video today. So, one of the things I've noticed is that people are generally really bad at building decks in Eternal. Um, so I kind of wanted to give a quick tutorial on how to build certain low played archetypes in the diverse card format to make them more viable. So the one, I think the best example is Deep. Deep has like a 36% win rate on masteringruneterra.com. It is technically one of the worst decks you could be playing in Eternal. But I'm going to tell you kind of how to spot the power points in a certain archetype for the extended card format to make it more viable. So there's a couple changes here from kind of the Majin list. The first thing is I don't think Deep should be on Vengeance. You've already got Devourer of the Depths. Just lean into that. It'll get the job done most of the time. Again, Slamming Beef is what this deck does well. Mega Tusk is one of the new Deep cards. I think it's pretty good. It heals up your Deep units, allows you to maintain board presence. It's a good Deep card. I think it's actually fairly essential at this point. As essential as something like Undergrowth. So again, Mega Tusk as a 3 of, absolutely. Abyssal Eye is your draw. Devourer of the Depths is your vengeance. And then you run the one Shipwreck Hoarder for the treasures. I want to be even further into treasures because I believe that treasures are the only thing that allows Deep to remain competitive in the Eternal format. Again, at the end of the day, if you aren't drawing things like your 3 worms or your Keel Breaker, Deep feels so bad to play right now in terms of its power scale. Like, you're just not getting there just by slamming, you know, Abyssal Eye as a 6/6, right? Like a 6/6, who cares? In a world with, you know, Eddie, or Elder Dragon as we refer to him, playing boons on 6-cost cards, Abyssal Eye as a 6/6 is going to feel pretty insubstantial. You can ramp into 10/10s, you can ramp into a million big cards that have Deathless, and like there's just so many things that you can do in terms of slamming Beef that a 6/6 isn't going to feel that good. Ditto with a 7/7. So if you're not like the beefiest deck around, one of the things that you can do is essentially be beefy but also having a lot of value. So treasures is kind of where that comes in. I believe treasures are the saving grace of Deep. I've tried a lot of different variants. You know, I've tried the Turbo Deep, which is kind of the one that's on Mastering Runeterra right now, where you run the 3 tosses and for 1 mana, and you try to go deep as fast as humanly possible, and then the cards kind of lie where they may. The other thing is Jawl Hunters. I consider Jawl Hunters to be essential for Deep. Jawl Hunters being challenging big stuff and giving you a sea monster. It's a staple card. So like the big problem is just card variety in Deep. There's the 3 mana Landmark, which is actually okay, but it's very slow right now. Even for Eternal, like even by Eternal standards, it's slow. Maybe if it tossed 2 per turn, it'd be more viable, but tossing 1 per turn is very slow. Dead Bloom Wander is mandatory. Jawl Hunters is mandatory. Undergrowth is mandatory. Vile Feast is mandatory in Eternal. Against the aggro decks, I tried cutting this and then I just get blown up by aggro. Soul Harvest, I want both. I don't want to be on Vengeance. I want Vile Feast, Soul Harvest all day long. Give me this to kill like cheap sort of engines. This is very good at killing engines and cheap, you know, kind of engine champions as well. Soul Harvest will kill those, and then Vile Feast will kill the go wide strategies. Sea Scarab is mandatory. Dredgers is mandatory. Again, Mega Tusk, kind of MVP card as well for stabilizing. Abyssal Eye for the draw. Devourer of Depths is your vengeance, and then the 1 Shipwreck Hoarder. So you basically have room for 1 spice card after building out the list of Deep. If you want to be as consistent as humanly possible, you basically have room for 1 spice card, and in that case, I say Lost Riches. Lost Rich, you know, there's a chance that you might toss the Shipwreck Hoarder, and then for the rest of the game you just don't get access to treasures. So just having only 1 Shipwreck Hoarder and nothing else feels very inconsistent. I want to be a little heavier into the treasures. I will run Lost Riches. I have no problem doing that. And in that case, yeah, we are definitely leaning very heavily, almost more so than going Turbo Deep. We just want to draw out those value cards, which is the Plate Worm Egg and the Keel Breaker. That's going to feel very powerful. So again, a lot of Eternal and what makes Eternal a format that is interesting and diverse and different is understanding your synergy points. I look at Deep and I see treasure. 100% of the time I see treasure. There's really no other reason why you should be playing Deep right now. Um, I see, ramp, and the minute I see ramp, I think sort of, one of Eddie, and then a lot of big stuff. Um, I see thralls, and the minute I look at thralls, I think of time in a bottle, uh, and I see the buffed preservationist kind of being the new spice, right, for thralls. Um, so a lot of being good at this format, and of course, Bowdier, Clockhand, being very heavy on the value because Eternal's a slower format. You can actually do this. You can just run a normal Thralls deck, um, and then just have your top end be very heavy, and that works fine. So again, understanding where the power lies in a specific deck. I see, say you talk about like the memeiest deck in the world. I see Transform, and I'm thinking like Wild Claw's Ferocity to transform at focus speed. I see Teeny Dactyl with Sejuani perma-freezing the opponent's board forever. Again, I'm not going to stand here and say that Transform is the best deck ever, but if you want to play Transform in Eternal, and if you want to at least steal some games, understanding the interaction of Teeny Dactyl with Sejuani, and then possibly Curious Changeling transforming into two Teeny Dactyls, things like that. Merkwolf Shaman is your draw, just understanding, and then of course all this little stuff that you use to hit the opponent's board, you can then later transform into something bigger for the late game. That is what Eternal is. It is understanding those power points. So it's basically the same thing as what Grappler did. When you look at Grappler kind of winning with Braum Nora, like he understood that Mini Morph was really, really good into the meta. He understood, again, Buried in Ice in a Nora deck is very good because typically you're 6 wide and then you have infinite value, so you can just wait until like turn 10 to play your Buried in Ice and then swing with your full board. Spirits Unleashed, making all the portal, junk units bigger. Aloof Travelers for a little bit of mill, he understood where the power points were, and that is and the synergy points specifically, and that is the key with being a good Eternal player. What is it that makes Hecarim good? Well, it's sharks, right? But then you also want to be on, Hate Spike and Death's Grasp for interactivity. You want to be on Mark of the Isles for a little bit of extra push. Maybe you want to, if you're a memer like me, maybe you want a little bit of Drain because you don't actually want to, in case you don't win entirely off a board, then you have the Drain win condition. Understanding that these synergy points and these power points exist in Eternal, and it isn't standard where, I'm going to play Galio and I'm just going to make my units as big as possible. I'm going to make the biggest Petracite Broadwing that has ever existed, the biggest Petracite Charger that has ever existed. To be honest, out of these two cards, Petracite Broadwing is the better one in Standard. Petracite Charger is the better one in Eternal because it cannot be killed by Flock, and Flock is very popular in this format. Again, kind of understanding the synergy points, making sure that you run Balin, things like that. It's very, very important. It's not just, okay, I'm going to present the biggest Broadwing ever possible, which is, you can do that, but it's not going to win the game because this isn't Standard. So yeah, that's a little like instructionary session on, knowing where the value points are in the extended card format, how it differs from Standard, how you want to build differently. And, if you don't, you're going to be running into trouble. I'll give you another meta example. This is Draven Rumble. And Draven Rumble is, built pretty straightforwardly in terms of its synergy points, right? Very one-drop spammy, very discard heavy, mites to push through for damage. Again, exceptionally straightforward in terms of its construction because it knows where its synergy points lie, it knows where the power lies. Basically, might on Rumble. That's where the win condition is. And then push enough damage in the early game that you can win with might on Rumble. So that's Eternal King signing out. Again, I just wanted people to get a better grasp of how to build for this format because it is so different than Standard. being kind of the most linear power progression. Beef, beef wins. Beef is the biggest beefy units are going to win the game 100% of the time. Like that's what standard is. Eternal is synergy, and spells. Um, Sparklefly with Blessing of Targon. In an elusive deck, right? That's and then the rest of this stuff, doesn't matter quite as much, except Acorn discounts the burst spells. That's the extended card format. All right, guys, take care.